Welcome to the 902 podcast, the official podcast of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm Captain Vik, and I want to thank you for tuning in. This podcast will give you an inside look at LSO with topics and guests to discuss public safety issues impacting Lancaster County. Be sure to subscribe for highlights on news, cases, and the people working for you at LSO. You can also follow us across social media by searching for @LSO Nebraska. That's @LSO Nebraska on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Welcome to the 902 podcast. Today we are here to talk about partnerships and cooperation between law enforcement agencies. In studio, we've got Sheriff Terry Wagner. Hello, Sheriff.
Good morning. How are you?
Chief Deputy Houchin.
Morning.
And with us, our special guest is Chief of Police in Kearney, Nebraska, Chief Bryan Waugh. Bryan, you're on the Zoom line. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Good morning, everybody.
So we wanted to visit with you a little bit. We're fortunate enough to partner with you and KPD on a number of things, but it gave us an opportunity to just visit with you and connect on some of the partnerships and cooperation that are really necessary in modern law enforcement today. But before we do that, we wanted our listeners to get a little feel for you and kind of where you come from and what you're about. So how did you get into law enforcement originally?
Well, first of all, I want to again say thank you for having me. You guys, I consider each of you friends, and I think that will lend itself to the conversation today. That in law enforcement, we're obviously professional colleagues, but we're also friends, and that goes a long way towards what we're trying to do in all of our communities. My story was probably very similar to a lot of us in law enforcement. You know, I grew up in West Virginia. I worked at the grocery store. And I had a mentor who was my boss at the grocery store. And when I graduated high school, I thought I wanted to be an engineer, tried college for a little bit. And he kind of asked me, have you ever thought about being a police officer? And I really didn't. And we talked more and more about that as the months went on after graduation. And I decided to join the Air Force, knowing that the Air Force had a law enforcement specialty. I entered the Air Force in 1993 and as a law enforcement specialist, and the rest is history. I stayed in the Air Force for 4 years. I was hired with the La Vista Police Department in 1997, and here we are today.
Awesome. You and I share that a little bit. When I was in, the Air National Guard and Air Force side, they had actually combined those career fields. I think you and I talked about this before, but they used to have two different tracks, kind of that law enforcement and force protection stuff, and now they've combined both into just one security forces career field. But yeah, definitely a good way in the door, similar to military police and a lot of the other branches for folks. So, and remind me, were you stationed in Nebraska then before you got into civilian law enforcement?
I was. So I went through basic training in San Antonio, Texas, and I was stationed at Offutt Air Force Base in Bellevue. Did my entire 4 years of active duty in Bellevue, got deployed to the desert twice after the first Gulf War and after there was a terrorist attack in Saudi Arabia, went back to Saudi Arabia for another 4-month deployment. And then when I separated from active duty is when I started with La Vista PD.
So walk us through kind of your path then at from La Vista and some of your roles that brought you to where you're at today.
Sure. So obviously I started out, went to the Nebraska Law Enforcement Training Center for the Basic Police Academy. Once I graduated there, I went through the La Vista Field Training Program. I was a night shift uniform patrol officer for 2 years, and then I was blessed, I believe, to receive an assignment as a narcotics detective working with the Omaha Metro Area Drug Task Force, which is a federal task force that's still active today. I worked narcotics for about 4 years. I went from there to be a general crime detective for 2 more years. Then I was promoted to sergeant and went back to uniform patrol as a uniform patrol supervisor, shift sergeant. Went from there to the traffic unit and La Vista PD Special Services Unit, where I was the sergeant and overseeing special events, school resource officers, K-9 unit, traffic unit, and all things as directed. Basically, anything the chief needed, we would get done out of that unit.
Other duties as assigned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Went on from there. I was promoted to captain over the Special Services Division, so that included all of those areas of the department, as well as some administrative duties with budgeting and things like that. During that time, I was also in college. I didn't go to college until after the Air Force. Received my undergrad through Bellevue University in management, and had the opportunity to go to the FBI National Academy after I got promoted to captain. And following that, I got my master's degree from the University of Oklahoma. Don't hold that against me, Nebraska. I know that's a tough pill to swallow, but I am a Sooner. Never stepped foot on campus, but I had the opportunity to get my master's degree in leadership from Oklahoma University. And that's kind of what drove me toward wanting to pursue an opportunity as a police chief. And the opportunity presented itself here in Kearney back in 2018, and started here in January of 2019.
Awesome. Well, we'll talk about a few more of the things that are going on there at KPD here in a few minutes. But big thing we wanted to talk to you about today was those partnerships in law enforcement, and we kind of share that bond from the FBI National Academy. We'll circle around to that in a minute as well. But one of the quotes that stood out to me from my time out there, this is from J. Edgar Hoover, that really got the whole thing started there in Quantico. He says, "The most effective weapon against crime is cooperation, the efforts of all law enforcement agencies with the support and understanding of the American people." And I know they've got that quote up a few different places on some memorials and things out there, but I wanted to just get your perspective on the importance of interagency cooperation between law enforcement agencies today.
It's a great question, and it's a timely topic. We look back, and for me, my career started in the late 90s in Sarpy County. La Vista is a suburban community within Sarpy County. You've got Papillion Police, La Vista Police, Bellevue Police, bordering Douglas County and the city of Omaha, and Ralston PD's right there with that group as well. So I was exposed to the value of interagency cooperation early and often in my career. And I was exposed to a lot of great leaders within that period of time, from the Sheriff Davis in Sarpy County, Chief Lawson in La Vista, and the several different chiefs in Papillion and Bellevue. And in Sarpy County, probably no different than in Lancaster County, and very similar to what we have out here in Buffalo County, is that we find the sharing of resources, the sharing of talent, the sharing of training cannot be understated. And I think our communities appreciate it, that we're looking for opportunities to spread the capabilities among agencies. When we're bordering each other, there's no need to live in silos or to operate in silos, because crime doesn't know borders. We know that. And when we establish those relationships early and often, we will be in a better position to serve our collective communities rather than just the individual jurisdiction that is on our shoulder patch or on our badge. So I think that has continued to evolve. Today, it's a lot different probably than it was in the late 90s or even before that. Things have changed, but ultimately, I believe that we can do our job for public safety as a whole when we're working together toward the same goal.
You said something there on they don't know any borders and the sharing of information, especially when you're talking about all those agencies there. If you're hogging all your information and not giving it out, there's going to be a lot of crimes that do not get solved. And it's just because the information wasn't getting to where it needed to go. And we even find it here in Lincoln and the surrounding counties at this point, because we can all point at a ton of cases that they're doing it in other counties, and they may have some information there or found a piece of property that's stolen from you that could connect it. And if you're not talking with each other, it doesn't get solved, and egos got to be put away, and we just have to work together.
We all went to Quantico and had friends that were on each of the coasts, peer agencies, and it always makes me think that the taxpayers in Nebraska get a great deal a real great bang for their buck, because if you look at those agencies on the coast, they'll be much the same geographical area that we are, much the same population base that we are, but yet they'll have 3 times the number of deputy sheriffs we have. And I'm sure on the police side, Bryan, you've seen the same things where they'll have a ton more cops than you've got. And part of the reason that we work together well is because we have to. Number one, we just don't have the volume of officers individually to handle all contingencies. So we have to learn to work together, and we can just stretch our resources that much further and be a good bargain for our taxpayers.
Yeah, the bang for the buck.
You bet.
Here in Kearney, obviously my career brought me from La Vista to Buffalo County. And this year, Buffalo County and the city of Kearney, so Buffalo County Sheriff's Office, Kearney Police Department, we're celebrating 30 years of being co-located. And what that means is we're in the same building, very similar to Lancaster County, Lincoln PD. But the unique thing that I find here that I'm really proud of, and it's something that I've embraced since day one, walking through this door and getting to know my partner here, Sheriff Miller, who I consider to be a great friend at this point in time. The relationship we have between Kearney PD and Buffalo County is a model for that cooperation between 2 law enforcement agencies. Here, the Kearney Police Department handles property and evidence for both departments. We handle police records for both departments. We have a joint SWAT team that both departments have operators on, have sniper teams on, have negotiators on. We share, obviously, we have our 911 center here for all of Buffalo County and Kearney. We recently entered into an agreement to upgrade our radio system. So we're now on a 800 megahertz trunk radio system, 7 towers, 3 of them are in Kearney. And that's a 50-50 shared expense between the city of Kearney and Buffalo County. So we're always we've got a shared impound lot, you name it. We're not duplicating effort. We're not having 2 of everything. We're sharing those items that we can definitely share across the agencies, but we each still have our own unique identity as a police department, as a sheriff's department. We have different strategies on things, but ultimately we're working together for the best interest of the community, and it works. Our detective bureau, we've got Kearney police detectives and we've got Buffalo County detectives in the same room. They're right beside each other all day long, collaborating on cases. So,
back in 1994, Bryan, we were looking at this building that we're in now used to be the county city building for Lincoln Lancaster County. And all of the county and city agencies were in this building. And then in the mid-'90s, they were going to remodel this into the Justice and Law Enforcement Center that it is today. So my chief deputy and I traveled to Kearney to look at your facility and see how Kearney and Buffalo County, or how Kearney PD and Buffalo County live together like you're doing now. And it was a great model for us to apply here. We don't have quite the same level of integration that you do, but we have a lot, and we have many joint units that really work well together and that really provide great service for our taxpayers. But yeah, so Kearney and Buffalo County were the model for us to look at when we were looking at doing this building.
That's awesome.
I think that kind of segues into the next thing we want to talk about. Lancaster County and Kearney and Buffalo County don't actually share a physical border, but 100 miles between us doesn't necessarily stop us from sharing things either, and I think that's awesome. We talked about a couple examples of programs that we work together on. Aside from that, as far as being the model for kind of how we're set up here today, even more recently in modern history, some of the technology stuff that we're buying now costs a lot of money. And, we're not always fortunate to have 2 of everything. A good example, we use these 3D scanners. We use Faro scanners here. Kearney PD got a Faro scanner around the same time that we did for measuring crime scenes, crash scenes, all sorts of things like that. And those things have to go in for maintenance once in a while. Sometimes you might have a big scene where you need 2 of them, and that's not something that either one of our agencies were able to afford by ourselves. And so we were fortunate enough, Chief, to be able to partner with Kearney PD to kind of cover each other. We had kind of an agreement to cover each other while either our equipment was out, getting serviced or God forbid we needed a really big scene and had to have a little bit extra help. So it's been great. We've been able to partner on things like that.
I think about that, and you mentioned being 100 miles apart, and that Faro technology that we have available here and you have there. I recall back when I first moved to Kearney, I believe we had your scanner here for a little while ours was in for maintenance, and I thought to myself, like, that's pretty neat. I didn't realize we had such a great relationship from all the way out here in central Nebraska with Lancaster County. And we've done other opportunities since then. We have a similar agreement going on today with our drone team. Kearney Police Department has a very active drone team. We've got relationship with Papillion Police recently where we're sending one of our expert drone pilots. I consider him an expert. He's been doing a lot of great work, and we'll send him to Papillion for training, and vice versa. They've got a very talented pilot there in Papillion as well, and he'll come out here and train with our officers. So it just evolves, and I would always go back to that wouldn't happen without relationships like we're having right now. On these casual moments before any of us is having a bad day, it's nice to know that we have conversations leading up to and during those moments in our communities where we know we can reach out when we need that assistance, and it's going to be there.
Well, and speaking of that, once in a while we do have to reach into the bank account and pull out a deposit, and you guys came through for us on something just like that. We had some civil unrest back in Lincoln in summer of 2020, and it was an emergency for us, and we were in a position where we needed some tear gas,
Chemical agents, yes.
And so Kearney was kind enough to loan us some because that was quite honestly something I'll just say it. We were unprepared for what we were facing to some extent.
Well, a lot of our agencies around us were going through the same things we were, so we couldn't borrow theirs because they needed it. So being able to reach out to a community that was a little bit further away, and luckily you did not have any of those issues out your way, and you were able to help us.
It's our pleasure.
And, it doesn't just stop with equipment, though. I mean, we share personnel on some things. You gave the example of the UAS pilot stuff. We've also shared some resources back and forth for even promotional panels. I know I've borrowed some of your staff, and we're going to be sending some staff out there in a week or so to help out with a promotion process for you guys. And I don't know how you feel about it, Chief. For us, having an outside look at our staff really helps us when we're trying to make some of those decisions when it comes to promotion things. Number one, because it gives us an outside perspective, but number two, it helps insulate us from any of that kind of internal reputation and bias that sometimes plays into those decisions.
Yeah, it helps get rid of the quote unquote good old boy feeling that people can have because you got an outside person coming in and helping making those decisions.
I agree completely. When I first moved to Kearney I came here from the outside. I was the new chief, and that was a goal I had. I wanted the talent and the professionalism to be evaluated by outside professionals, like we're doing right now with our sergeant promotion process. And I think it adds a significant amount of credibility to your process. But it also, and I'm always a fan of when I get asked by another agency if we can send one of our leaders to assist on a promotion panel. It's a huge opportunity for that, whether it's a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, you name it. It's an opportunity for that person to continue their own leadership development, because when you're asked to evaluate somebody for a position, you can't help but learn.
Absolutely.
You can't help but learn from, you're exposed to the way Lancaster County operates, to your structure, to your policies and your procedures and the culture within your agency. And you can come back to Kearney and say, hey, you know what? I learned something when I was in Lancaster County that maybe we ought to try here.
Yep, you're absolutely right. It's a great learning experience. I've sat on Chief's panels before. Ben sat on them, and so has John. And it really is, it's very beneficial to us to be able to help other agencies.
Absolutely.
The other part of J. Edgar Hoover's statements is is with the support and understanding of the American people. And so I think it's great if we cooperate between law enforcement agencies, but we've also got to partner with our community organizations too. You've got a lot of cool things going on in Kearney, Chief, right now, and I wanted to give you a few minutes just to talk about some of those partnerships. But, you know, you just started a co-responder model for mental health. How's that working?
It's working very well. So, and that goes back to the cooperation among agencies. This is something that myself and Sheriff Miller worked with our local behavioral health Region 3. So it's kind of all three of us came together. We were able to apply for, and we were awarded a DOJ grant to start a co-responder program here in Kearney and Buffalo County. The program's been underway now for about 6 months. It's proving to be extremely beneficial. So we have a licensed clinical therapist, works directly embedded with the police officers and deputies. And additionally, we have a community outreach coordinator position, and that person is the follow-up piece. So the co-responder will respond to calls involving behavioral health, substance abuse, mental health, and complete a clinical assessment along with the police officer in a safe environment. Obviously, we will make sure that it's safe for them to be there. And what we've seen, and just for instance, for the month of April, they were deployed on 19 calls for the Kearney Police Department. And out of those 19 calls, we had 3 emergency protective custody where we had to place them into EPC. And that was our goal. We want to try to divert these consumers toward services within the community through the region, through Region 3, as well as other nonprofit organizations that can help folks, directing them toward services available. And then the community outreach coordinator follows up with those folks daily to make sure that their needs are being met. So we're able to divert from the hospital. We're able to divert from the jail. That's the other piece. We want to try to make sure that folks that don't need to be in jail aren't in jail. So it's working very well. The other projects that we're doing with that as well would be with the First Responders Foundation. We had some members of our community decide to start a chapter of the First Responders Foundation in Kearney. So there was one in Omaha, there's one in Papillion, and we've got a chapter here, and we're focusing heavily through that organization on officer resiliency and preparing our officers for the mental health that our own officers are experiencing for their own health and well-being. So it's been good.
Awesome. And I know you guys have worked closely with your public schools out there in Kearney on some reunification training. Was that something recently?
We've got a great relationship with Kearney Public Schools as well as our private and parochial schools here in Kearney. And we've got 3 school resource officers that work throughout the city at different schools. There's always a school resource officer at the high school, obviously, but they'll also rotate to the middle schools and to the elementary schools as well. And we are working toward making sure that each school, no matter what, whether it's the high school, middle school, the elementaries, or the parochials, or the private schools, have an understanding of, in the event of an emergency. And obviously, you know, you talk a lot about active shooter, active killer types of scenarios at schools, but this program, whether it's reunification, standard response protocol, can be applied toward any type of emergency. It could be a flood, it could be a power outage, it could be a gas leak. And when kids are involved, it's a serious matter. I mean, parents are going to be concerned. We want to make sure that our parents, our school staff, our administrators are talking the same language and are prepared to reunify those parents with their children and their loved ones. So it's been great. The partnership continues also with our school board toward these goals. So we all work together towards establishing responsible, reasonable, thoughtful policies and procedures for the protection of the kids in this community.
Outstanding.
Yeah, game day is not the day to first try this stuff out, and having those relationships built is huge before anything like that occurs.
When we come back from a quick break, we're going to talk a little bit more with Chief Waugh about the FBI National Academy and some of the things that spin out of that experience. We'll be right back.
If you want a challenging career, a career where you can make a difference in your life, your family's life, and the lives of those in your community, come and join the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. To learn more or to apply, visit us online at www.joinlso.com.
And we're back with Chief Waugh. So Chief, we've all been to the FBI National Academy. When did you attend?
I went in 2016, session 263.
Okay. I was in session 284 just back in 2022. Chief, Sheriff, how about your sessions?
I went in 2007. I'm the 229.
And I went in 1995, the 183.
Did they have running water then? There?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
We had phones too.
Oh, wow.
Well, just by comparison, I'll let our listeners go. It didn't start when you went. It goes all the way.
It did start when I went.
It goes all the way back to 1935.
Yep, absolutely.
But it's same thing we're talking about today. It's a cooperative partnership between the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, and state and local law enforcement agencies. You know, their mission is really to try to foster that cooperation and also professional development within our industry. And what started in 1935 is still going on almost 100 years later, and we're just happy to be a part of it. So I wanted...
You were talking about the relationships that you build going to Quantico, and if you think about my circumstance, for instance, it's been 27 years since I went to the academy. The academic stuff that I learned, a lot of that has changed and evolved, has gotten better. It may not be of value now because of technology, but the relationships that you build and that you foster when you're at the academy and after are still the core benefit of attending the National Academy. And just so the listeners know, the FBI has put on this senior police management training called the National Academy since 1935. 1% of law enforcement officers in America are invited to attend the National Academy. So it's a big deal. It's probably the best law enforcement experience that I had in my career, and it still continues today with the alumni association called the National Academy Associates. So just a little background there.
Yeah, well, and I wanted to just kind of give each of you a chance to talk about any key takeaways or experiences that you had in relationship to our talk today as far as cooperation goes. But any that come top of mind for you guys?
Well, I still in contact with Billy Hitchens. He was a lieutenant from the Georgia State Patrol, and I remember him walking in my room. We're going to be roommates, and he's all dressed in this nice suit and tie and talking. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got a trooper here. What's this going to be like? And he turned out to be the greatest roommate I could possibly have. He's second in command in Georgia State Patrol right now, and we still talk with each other and bounce things off. And that probably made my experience the best. But one of the things because in 2015, I was the president of the Nebraska Chapter, and we are lucky enough, the sheriff lets us go to the national conference each year. And the great thing with that was we get to go see some of the speakers, and some of those have not hit the Midwest, because once in a while you get these speakers and every association has them, but I was able to see some that nobody else has had. So, with the Boston bombing was one of the big ones there. We also had a gentleman from California where the law enforcement officer started killing some of his supervisors and had them come in there and give the review of those cases, and they hadn't been there. So those are the kind of things you can get by being part of that association.
Absolutely. Chief Waugh, any from you?
Yeah, so I agree with the relationships that you build there are, I call it, it's kind of like the secret sauce of the National Academy. And I think it goes right back to J. Edgar Hoover when this was started. The cool thing about it is there's academics to it, there's physical fitness to it, but ultimately what you're trying to do is combat crime and make your community safer through the relationships that you build. And we talked about this on the previous segment that, crime knows no border, right? And that's the entire United States. And when, we're same as Lancaster County, we're a city that borders Interstate 80. A lot of traffic goes up and down that big road every day, and if we can have a contact in Denver or a contact in California, it works so much better to have that relationship. So my personal experience has been that I can pick up the phone, or I can go to our National Academy Associates webpage and find a contact in any city in the United States or the world for that matter. We should mention that this is a partnership with our allied countries that also send law enforcement from other countries. And really a big example from my session was we had a commander from the Afghanistan Police Department in my class. And everybody knows the recent withdrawal from Afghanistan happened, and it was a dangerous place for anybody who had a allegiance or any kind of relationship with the United States. And we were able, through the National Academy Associates, as well as the State Department and all the other folks that were involved in that, to get our classmate and his family safely evacuated from Afghanistan. And it was all done through classmates from the FBI National Academy who are actively still in the profession of law enforcement in the U.S. So it's a worldwide partnership, and those relationships are definitely the biggest value that I find with my experience through the National Academy.
Yeah, I bet he's real thankful you have it too, because that's huge.
He
Wow.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as the newest one to the group here, I always knew about it, but I didn't. Obviously, you don't know. It's hard to describe to somebody that's never been there. But having been there, I just had an opportunity the other day. Our criminal division is working on a case, and someone that we're investigating had some contacts in a different state, and it just happened that they were having some trouble getting some reports on some cases that we were needing to be able to compare against some things that we were working on here. Someone from that agency happened to be in my class. What was going to take a few days to get reports back, and we were kind of in a holding pattern on, he and I just exchanged a few text messages, and I had the reports that we needed in my email a few minutes later. So, I mean, it's those things that I had kind of always heard about, but I just hadn't quite experienced that secret sauce like you're talking, Chief. But it's definitely something real, and like we had discussed earlier, it's something that our citizens definitely get a bang from the buck on that too.
Yeah.
So,
well, I tell you, with extraditions, it's really huge when you're trying to go get somebody, and you call some of these bigger agencies and you can't even get a live person. But if you can look on there and know somebody and make that phone call and have that contact, that personal contact, it's amazing how quickly things can get done, and it makes life so much easier.
well, before we close out, I did want to talk. We mentioned the Nebraska chapter of the FBI National Academy Associates. LSO has obviously had some involvement in that organization, but Chief Waugh, you're actually the president of the Nebraska chapter right now. So I wanted to give you a few minutes just to talk about what that organization is and how it plays into our cooperation.
Sure. So the FBI National Academy Associates, and that's a unique thing as well, and Sheriff Wagner mentioned it. There's a lot of other executive leadership programs out there for law enforcement, but the unique thing about the FBI National Academy is, I believe, the association, which will cause all of us, once we graduate, to stay involved and stay connected, and increase that ability to exchange information and share information and fight crime. So the National Academy Associates chapter of Nebraska, we currently have 135 members across the state. That includes law enforcement leaders from border to border in Nebraska. And we meet at a minimum once a year. We do an annual retrainer, we call it, so where we all get together. We share, we exchange information, we learn, we have case studies, whether that's local or bringing in a national speaker. We also have, usually we'll do some kind of a luncheon, whether that's in the fall or the spring as well. And we look for opportunities to be involved with the community. You know, last year we did our luncheon at Boys Town in Omaha, where we were able to bring law enforcement leaders from the state of Nebraska to Boys Town to engage with the youth that are at Boys Town, and also provide a donation on behalf of our chapter to Boys Town for their programming that they have, which is having a great impact on the youth of Nebraska. So that's a wonderful opportunity. We also stay involved with our youth leadership program, where we nominate at least one, or we take applications for youth to attend the National Youth Leadership Program, where they get to go to Quantico and have a great experience with other young people from across the country. And then we have the charitable foundation that we're heavily involved with as well, where we give money back to the FBI National Academy Charitable Foundation, which directly impacts communities across the country and law enforcement. So if there's a natural disaster in Louisiana, we're able to, if there's a member there that is impacted by that, the foundation will reach out and provide assistance for those families that may need it. So it's just a wonderful program. It's a wonderful opportunity to build relationships, meet new people in the profession, and stay active. And I think that's the unique thing about the National Academy. You know, there's other, like I said, there's others out there, but they don't have that connection after they graduate.
You know, one of the things, Bryan, they always talk about is that, you know, you can pay your dues to any of the other professional organizations and be a member. You can't just pay your dues to the National Academy and become a member. You have to be a graduate of the FBI National Academy to even be able to be a member. So that's the unique status that the National Academy Associates has over some of the other professional organizations.
Chief, Sheriff, any other parting thoughts for today?
Well, the big thing, we got a big state, and having these conferences and reaching out and be able to talk and have these relationships, and I think it's huge. You know, the best thing about this profession is you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. If you reach out, there's somebody who's probably already done that, and you can learn, and sharing that information and getting that out is huge. And you know, it's like our Narcan project. I reached out to several of them at the academy on how they got theirs started and what they did, and it made it so much easier to get that program, which is, you know, now with fentanyl and all that is huge. So that's the biggest thing I come out. And like I said, it's great that 100 miles away from each other, we're sharing and doing that. And it's important because it's nice now because he's came from the east part. Now he's in the center. So now we got another great contact out there.
Well, you know, I have, everybody knows where Kearney's at, I hope. And we've got the Archway that crosses over Interstate 80. And speaking of connections, so I've had, since I've lived out here now almost 4.5 years, probably at least once a month, I'll get a picture from a National Academy classmate who's driving through the United States in the middle of central Nebraska, and they drive under that archway, and they send me a picture of it. Like, I've never seen it. Hey, I'm driving through Kearney, you know, and I'm like, well, stop for coffee if you want, you know. But it's kind of neat that that is an iconic piece, and the National Academy folks always send me a picture of it. So yeah. I've got a catalog of Archway pictures on my phone.
That's pretty cool.
Chief Waugh, we just really want to thank you very much. I know you're a busy guy. Appreciate you spending a few minutes of your day with us to talk about these important partnerships and how important cooperation is between law enforcement agencies. The other thing we need is people. We need people just like the Kearney Police Department needs people. If you're interested in becoming a employee at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, you can visit www.joinlso.com. But if you're interested in police work in the Kearney community, we'd also encourage you to check out joinkpd.com. And I'm sure some of Chief Waugh's staff would be happy to talk to you about bringing you into their organization with open arms as well. But want to encourage people, we'll put some of this on our social media as well with some links, but you can visit joinlso.com, also at LSO Nebraska, to visit any of our social media outlets. And you can also find the Kearney Police Department on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by searching for @KearneyPolice. And we would encourage you to check out all of the cool things that are going on at the Kearney Police Department under Chief Waugh's leadership. So thank you very much, Chief, for being a part of the show today. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again real soon.
I appreciate the opportunity. And while I still have the chance, we talk about our community, and in the event that members of our community listen to this, I want to thank them. I want to thank this community for the incredible support we enjoy in law enforcement, and we cannot do what we do without them. We are a community policing organization, and you often hear that term thrown about in our profession, but I believe we do things the right way for the right reasons, and ultimately, for the betterment of this community. So thanks, Kearney, for your support. We appreciate it. We couldn't do what we do without you.
You know, Bryan, I think it's the Midwest way, because You know, when I was an FTO and you got a new deputy in the car, they've got to drive with that finger on the steering wheel so they can wave at farmers. And a lot of folks just aren't used to being waved at in that manner. So it really is a beneficial working relationship with the consumers in the Midwest. They appreciate us. I know you guys feel the same way, that your citizens, they really appreciate what you do and support you, and we get the same feeling in Lancaster County. So great people to work for.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time, Chief. We'll see you around. That's all the time that we have for today's episode of the 902 podcast. We really appreciate you spending some time with us. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got questions or ideas for future episodes, send an email to lso@lancaster.ne.gov. Also, be sure to follow us and subscribe for future episodes of the 902 podcast on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. Take care.